If you had told me a week ago that I'd end up locked in a storage room with Aiden Harper, the guy everyone either wanted to be or wanted to hook up with, I would have laughed in your face. But here we are. I'll rewind. It started with an email, one of those generic ones from the Student Volunteer Board, looking for help setting up AV equipment for the Drama Club's spring showcase. Community service hours provided. I wasn't exactly gunning for a social event. I just needed the hours to keep my scholarship. So I clicked yes. The thing is, I had no idea Aiden was also going to be there. He wasn't the drama type. He was the quiet, athletic, too cool to care type. The kind of guy who'd show up in a hoodie and Vans, lean against the back wall with his arms crossed, and still somehow make every girl, and a few guys, me included, lose their minds. We had one class together last semester, Intro to Psych, but never spoke. I only knew his name because my lab partner wouldn't shut up about how hot he looked in track pants. So when I walked into the theater wing that afternoon and saw him already standing by the AV cart, my first thought was, shit. He glanced up at me, nodded once, then went back to coiling wires like he knew what he was doing. You here for the AV thing? I asked, voice cracking just slightly. A smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. Nah, I just like organizing cable in my free time, I flushed. Cool. Starting strong, I see. He chuckled. Yeah. Sorry, I'm Aiden. I told him my name, and we shook hands, which felt warmer than it needed to. His grip lingered half a second longer than normal. Probably just me overthinking it. The job was simple. Sort through the tech closet, test the microphones, and run the projector through a test cycle for the showcase on Friday. We'd barely started unpacking when the janitor, Mr. Russo, walked in. You boys need anything? He asked, jangling his keyring. Aiden shook his head. We're good. Just need to test the projector. Closet's open? Russo gave a short nod, walked over to the far end of the room, unlocked the equipment closet, and said, I'll be locking up soon. You two can finish in here, just don't make a mess. We both mumbled, yeah, or sure, and he disappeared down the hallway. We stepped into the narrow, dusty closet, lined with cables, monitors, and years of forgotten school equipment. The projector we needed was on the top shelf. Aiden was the one to grab it, reaching up with a little stretch that made his shirt lift. Just a bit, but enough for me to notice the sliver of skin above his waistband. I looked away. Too fast, probably. Here, he said, handing me the projector. I turned to carry it out of the closet, but then, click! The door shut behind us, and we heard the sound of the key turning in the lock. I blinked. Wait, did he just? I stepped back to the door and jiggled the handle. Locked. Aiden let out a soft, disbelieving laugh behind me. No way he just did that. I knocked. Mr. Russo? Nothing. There was a note taped to the inside of the door, like it had been left just for us. Don't worry, you're not trapped. You just need a little time. Let's keep this between us, yeah? I stared at it. Then at Aiden. Okay, is this like a prank? Did you plan this? He frowned. Why would I plan this? I didn't answer, mostly because my heart was pounding in my chest and not from panic. The space was small, too small, just enough for two people to stand shoulder to shoulder or chest to chest, if you weren't careful. Aiden shifted slightly, his shoulder brushing mine. Neither of us moved. He looked at me. Guess we wait. Guess so. The silence hung heavy for a moment. Then he asked, casually, You ever wonder what people say about you? I blinked. What? Like, you walk into a room, people already have ideas, like they've already decided who you are. I mean, yeah, I guess. He nodded slowly. Same. His voice was softer now, closer. They think they know me. Jock, chill, straight. The word straight echoed in the air between us like it didn't belong there. I turned slightly, facing him. aren't you?" He paused, then said, "What if I wasn't?" The room shrank, or maybe I just felt the space between us close without either of us moving. "Aiden," he met my eyes. "I've seen the way you look at me," he said. I wasn't sure if I was imagining it. But now? I don't think I was. My breath caught. "And what if I was looking?" He stepped closer, barely an inch. "Then maybe," he said, voice low, "you were seeing exactly what I wanted you to." For a second, I forgot how to speak. I was backed against a wall of metal shelves, a dusty stack of unused microphones behind me, and Aiden Harper standing inches from my face, saying things I didn't know how to process. He wasn't nervous. Not exactly, but there was a kind of heat in his eyes I'd never seen before, a tension, like he was waiting for me to either lean in or run. I didn't run. Instead, I said the only thing I could think of. "You're not messing with me, right?" He blinked, just once, then shook his head. "No," he said, "not messing. I wouldn't do that." I believed him. God help me, I really did. He looked down at his shoes for a second, then back up at me. "I wasn't even gonna come today," he said. "I volunteered for this, thinking nobody else would show up, and I'd get my hours in peace. But then I saw your name on the sign-up sheet this morning." My throat tightened. "You noticed that?" He nodded. "Yeah, I've noticed a lot." That hit harder than it should have. He took another half step closer. The air felt warmer, like all the oxygen in the room was slowly being pulled into the space between us. I could feel the heat coming off his skin, could smell that faint scent of soap and old wood floors and something else, something distinctly him. He raised a hand but stopped midway. "Can I?" I nodded before I even realized it. And then his fingers brushed my jaw, thumb grazing just under my cheekbone. It was such a simple touch, but it burned. His other hand found the edge of the shelf beside my head, bracing himself, like he wasn't sure what would happen next. "I've been thinking about this," he said softly. "About you." My heart was going ballistic. "For how long?" he smiled. "Just a flicker. Too long to pretend it doesn't matter." I swallowed. "Then don't pretend." That was it. That was the line that cracked something open between us. Aiden leaned in, slow but certain, his lips brushing mine with the kind of softness that made my knees go weak. Not aggressive, not a test, just real, warm, honest. Like he meant it. And I kissed him back. I didn't care if it was stupid, if it was sudden, if I'd walk out of that storage room confused, or wrecked, or completely unrecognizable. In that moment, I just needed more of him. His hand slid from my jaw to the back of my neck, his fingers threading into my hair, pulling me in deeper. I reached for his hoodie, grabbing a handful of fabric like I needed an anchor. The kiss deepened, still slow but more certain now, like we were both realizing something we didn't know we needed. Eventually, we pulled apart, breathing hard, foreheads touching. Aiden laughed quietly. "Okay, so that just happened." "Yeah," I whispered. "It did." We stayed like that for a while. The narrow room cocooned in silence, except for the occasional hum of the building's old ventilation system. My hands were still resting against his chest, and I could feel his heartbeat. Fast, steady, alive. He didn't move away, didn't rush anything, just stood there with me like we had all the time in the world. "Do you think he locked us in here on purpose?" I asked after a beat. Aiden raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Russo?" "Yeah." The way he said, "Let's keep this between us," he grinned. "Honestly, I think the guy's got a sixth sense for repressed tension." I rolled my eyes. "You're the one who said you weren't sure what you wanted." His smile faded just a bit, but not in a bad way. I wasn't. Not until now. He leaned in again, not for another kiss, just to rest his head briefly against mine. Like it meant something. Like I meant something. The lock rattled suddenly. We both jumped slightly as the doorknob turned, and Mr. Russo's gravelly voice called out from the other side. "You boys all set in there?" I glanced at Aiden, who smirked and whispered, "Back to the real world." But before we moved, he leaned in close again and murmured, Still want it to be our secret? I looked him dead in the eye. No, not anymore. The door creaked open and Mr. Russo peered in, all nonchalant, like he hadn't just locked two guys into a storage closet with dim lighting and enough sexual tension to short-circuit the fuse box. "You boys done?" he asked, tone dry but laced with something. Approval? Amusement? Aiden cleared his throat and casually stepped back, just enough to make it look like we hadn't been, inches from making out again. "Yeah, got what we needed." I grabbed the projector and gave Russo a tight-lipped smile. "Thanks for, opening the door." He nodded once and didn't say anything else. Just stood there as we walked past him, almost like he was making sure we were still a secret. But the second we were out of earshot, Aiden leaned close and whispered, "He definitely knows." I laughed under my breath. No kidding. We carried the equipment down the hall, the silence between us thick but not awkward. It was the kind of silence that only comes after something real. Something that changes the rules between people. We reached the drama room and dropped the projector on the table. Aiden turned to me, hands in his hoodie pocket, head tilted slightly like he was trying to read me again. "So, what now?" I sat on the edge of the table, suddenly aware of how fast my heart was still going. "What do you mean?" Are we pretending that didn't happen?" he asked. "Or do we talk about it?" Or he trailed off. I looked at him. Really looked. He was fidgeting with the drawstring on his hoodie. Something he hadn't done once in the hour I'd known him to be calm, collected, practically unreadable. "No," I said quietly. "We're not pretending." His shoulders relaxed a little. "Good." I hopped off the table and walked closer to him until we were toe-to-toe again. "But I'm not sure what this is yet." "Same," he admitted. We stood there for a moment, just letting the uncertainty settle between us without pushing it away. I wasn't ready to slap a label on what happened in that closet, but I wasn't ready to walk away from it either. Aiden reached up, scratched the back of his neck. A nervous habit, I was learning. "You doing anything after this?" I shook my head. "Nope, just heading home. You wanna maybe hang out?" I was gonna grab something from that taco truck by the campus gate. It was such a simple offer. And yet, it meant everything. I nodded. "Yeah, I'd like that." We packed up the rest of the gear together in companionable silence, then walked side by side out of the building. The early evening air was warm, a little breezy, and the parking lot was mostly empty except for a few staff cars. We didn't talk much on the way to the taco truck, but it wasn't awkward. I kept catching him looking at me from the side. Quick glances like he was checking to make sure I was still real, still walking next to him. When we got to the truck, he ordered 2 carne asada tacos and handed one to me like it was no big deal, like we hadn't just kissed in a locked closet 30 minutes ago. We found a bench near the side of the student union and sat down to eat, the wrappers crackling in our hands. Halfway through his second taco, Aiden said I was scared to say something. For a long time, I didn't interrupt, I just let him talk. "I wasn't sure what it was at first," he continued. "The way I'd notice you in class, or the way my stomach would twist when you laughed at something dumb," the professor said. I kept telling myself it didn't mean anything. He looked at me, eyes darker in the dim light. "But it does." I swallowed hard, unsure what to say to that. My own feelings had been locked up tight for so long, I didn't even know where to start unraveling them. "I always thought you were way out of my league," I said finally. Aiden snorted. "Dude, you have no idea how many times I wanted to sit next to you in class but chickened out." That made me laugh. "You? The guy who looks like he models for Patagonia ads?" He rolled his eyes. "Trust me, I've got just as much brain noise as anyone else." We finished eating in silence, the kind that feels full, not empty. And then, just before we got up to leave, Aiden leaned in close again and said, "Hey." "Yeah? I meant it earlier. I don't want this to be a secret." I didn't answer with words. I leaned forward and kissed him. Right there on the bench, in the open, with no janitors, no locked doors, no hiding, just him. Just me. And the night that was starting to feel like the beginning of something neither of us had planned, but both of us wanted. The kiss wasn't long, barely a few seconds. But it was public, and it was enough to change everything. When we pulled back, I half expected Aiden to freak out, to glance around, make sure nobody saw, crack a joke to cover the vulnerability. But he didn't. He just looked at me, dead in the eye, and smiled like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Okay," he said softly, like it all finally clicked into place. We stood from the bench and tossed our wrappers into the nearby trash can. The sun had set by then, and campus was getting that quiet golden hour glow where everything felt like a movie. It was hard not to feel a little surreal, like I had stepped into a version of my life I never thought would actually happen. "So," I said, stuffing my hands into my pockets as we walked back toward the parking lot, "how many people know about you?" Aiden hesitated, then glanced over. "No one. Not really?" I nodded, biting the inside of my cheek. He added quickly, "Not because I'm ashamed or anything. I guess I never thought it'd matter. Until now." That did something weird to my chest. Made it tighten and warm at the same time. I shrugged. I haven't told that many people either. Just my sister and one friend from high school who kind of already knew. "So we're both closeted loners who make out in janitor closets?" I snorted. "Yeah, that's the romantic summary." We reached the edge of the lot where our bikes were locked up. His was a beat-up mountain bike with faded decals. Mine was a second-hand hybrid I'd found on Craigslist. He leaned against his handlebars. "You want to come over?" The question was casual, but there was a nervous energy underneath it. "Tonight?" "Yeah. I mean, just to hang out. Watch something. Nothing weird, unless you want weird." "Then I'm open to..." "Okay, I'm rambling." I grinned. "You're definitely rambling." He laughed, rubbing the back of his neck again. I nodded. "Yeah, I'll come." His smile was all teeth. Aiden's apartment was about a 10-minute bike ride from campus. One of those student complexes with recycled air, stained carpets, and weirdly tall baseboards. He shared it with a guy named Jay, who was apparently out for the night at his girlfriend's. Which means, Aiden said as he unlocked the door, "We've got the place to ourselves." He immediately regretted how that sounded. "I didn't mean, like I wasn't." I held up a hand. "It's okay. I know." His place smelled like laundry detergent and faint pizza grease. A couch that had definitely seen better days sat in the middle of the living room, facing a small TV with more gaming consoles than cable boxes. Posters of bands I vaguely recognized hung slightly crooked on the walls. "Make yourself at home," he said, tossing his keys on the counter. I did. He came back from the kitchen with 2 sodas and handed me one before plopping next to me on the couch. Close, but not too close, like he was giving me room to breathe. I appreciated that. "So what do you usually watch?" he asked. "I don't know. I'm a sucker for dumb comedies," he smirked. "Like Superbad?" I nodded. "Or Pineapple Express?" "Classic." We settled into Step Brothers, which felt absurd enough to keep things from getting too serious. But even as we watched, the air between us felt charged, like we were still moving towards something neither of us had put into words yet. About halfway through the movie, I felt his fingers graze mine. Just lightly. I didn't pull away. He took that as permission, and slowly, carefully, slid his hand into mine. Our fingers interlocked, like it had been waiting to happen for a long time. Maybe it had. Neither of us said anything. We didn't need to. Eventually, I leaned into his shoulder. He shifted a bit, letting me rest there, his cheek pressing lightly against the top of my head. It was quiet. Not heavy, not dramatic, just still. Honest. Aiden whispered, "It's okay." I nodded. "Yeah, it's good." We stayed like that through the rest of the movie, only breaking apart when the credits rolled, and Netflix asked if we were still watching. He turned to me, eyes soft in the glow of the screen. "You want to crash here tonight?" My stomach did a slow flip, but I wasn't scared. "You sure?" He nodded. "Yeah, just sleep." No pressure. I smiled. Okay. He tossed me some sweats and a clean t-shirt from his drawer while he changed in the bathroom. When he came out, his hair was damp from a quick rinse, and he looked a little shy again, like the Aiden from before the closet door locked. We climbed into his bed, keeping some space between us at first, both of us laying on our backs, staring at the ceiling. Today was weird, he said after a while. Yeah, but a good weird. Yeah, he whispered. The best kind. I rolled onto my side, and after a beat, he did too. Our faces were only a few inches apart. I could see every little detail, the freckle under his eye, the way his lashes curled. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. Night, he murmured. Night. And then, gently, he kissed my forehead before pulling me in, arms wrapping around me like he'd done it 100 times before. And that's how I fell asleep in Aiden Harper's arms, wondering how the hell a locked storage closet had somehow opened the door to this. The first thing I noticed when I woke up was warmth, then pressure, arms still around me, steady breathing against the back of my neck, and the faint scratch of stubble brushing the edge of my jaw. Aiden hadn't moved all night. I blinked at the sunlight sneaking through the blinds, blinking slow, still half dreaming. But this wasn't a dream. This was his bed, his room. Him, wrapped around me like he belonged there. I didn't move right away, just lay there, quietly amazed that the guy I'd crushed on from afar for the better part of a year was now the reason my chest felt too full in the best way. Then, I felt him shift behind me, just a little. You awake? He mumbled, voice hoarse with sleep. Yeah, I said softly. He let out a breath that was more like a hum. I thought I might have imagined all this. Nope, I replied. Still here. Good. Another pause. Then, you okay? I rolled over so I could face him. He looked softer like this, puffy-eyed, hair a mess, barely awake, and still so goddamn beautiful it made me ache. Yeah, I said. I'm good. He smiled, then yawned. Okay, real talk? How weird was yesterday? On a scale from 1 to janitor locking you in a closet? I laughed. I think the janitor set the new gold standard for weird. Fair, he said, stretching a little. Do you think he did it on purpose? I tilted my head. You mean, like, played matchmaker? Aiden grinned. Wouldn't put it past him. Guy's got major. I know all your secrets, energy. I shook my head. He probably just thought we needed a push. Well, Aiden said, leaning in to press a lazy kiss against my cheek. I'm glad he did. We lay there a bit longer before finally crawling out of bed. He offered me a clean towel and pointed me to the bathroom while he made coffee. Everything about it felt domestic and intimate in a way that would have scared the hell out of me a few days ago, but didn't now. After I showered and changed, I found him standing in the kitchen, shirtless, pouring 2 mugs. He handed me one. Black okay? Perfect. We sipped in silence, leaning against the counter like we'd done this 100 times. So, I said, testing the waters, what do we do now? He looked over at me. You mean us? I nodded. I mean, we kissed. You invited me over, I slept in your bed. We also held hands during Step Brothers, so we've basically hit all the major milestones. I laughed into my mug. True. His expression softened, and he set his coffee down. Honestly, I don't know exactly what this is yet, but I want to figure it out. Me too. He stepped closer until our hips brushed. I'm not trying to rush anything, but I don't want to pretend yesterday didn't happen. We're on the same page. And, he added, lowering his voice, I'm not great at feelings. I'm better at actions. So show me. He leaned in and kissed me again. This time, slow, unrushed, unafraid. We didn't talk much after that. Just sat together on his beat-up couch, legs tangled under a blanket, watching some old show on mute, while the world outside moved on like none of this was new. But it was. It was brand new. And it felt like the start of something we both had been waiting for without realizing it. Around noon, we finally left his apartment. The sun was bright and warm, and when we crossed campus together, people definitely looked. Aiden had his hand shoved into his hoodie pocket, close to mine, brushing knuckles now and then. He didn't flinch. He didn't pull away. He just smiled at me. We passed Mr. Russo near the library. He was sweeping the sidewalk, like always. He gave us a long look as we walked by, then, just barely, nodded once. The ghost of a smile crossed his face. I think that was his version of a blessing. Back at the student center, I stopped and turned to Aiden. "You free later?" He nodded. "Yeah, always for you." I grinned. "Cool. There's something I want to show you." "What is it?" "You'll see." He narrowed his eyes, suspicious, but smiling. "You're not gonna lock me in a closet, are you?" "No promises." He laughed, then pulled me into a hug that lasted longer than it needed to. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't worried about being seen. I wasn't hiding. Not anymore. That afternoon, I brought Aiden to the music building. It wasn't glamorous. Just a dusty rehearsal room on the second floor with warped hardwood floors and ancient posters of jazz festivals from the 90s peeling off the walls. But it had a piano, an upright Yamaha that always stayed stubbornly out of tune no matter how many times they tried fixing it. "This is it?" Aiden asked, eyeing the flickering fluorescent light overhead. I nodded, stepping inside. "Welcome to my secret lair." He gave me a side smile. "What do you do here, play moody ballads in the dark?" I grinned. "Only on Tuesdays." He sat on one of the folding chairs as I settled onto the piano bench. "I used to come here when I needed to think. Or when I didn't want anyone to find me." He leaned back, watching me with quiet curiosity. "So why bring me?" I placed my fingers on the keys. "Because I don't want to hide this part of me anymore. From anyone. Especially not you." I played a few chords, warming up, nothing fancy. Just muscle memory, the kind of notes that filled the room like they belonged there. "You're good," he said after a minute, his voice softer now. "I'm okay." "No, you're good." I turned to look at him. His face was serious. No teasing, no smirk, just open, like he was letting me see him in the same way I'd just let him see me. "You know," he said, resting his elbows on his knees, "if someone told me even 3 days ago that I'd be sitting in a practice room listening to you play piano after waking up in your arms, I'd have said they were full of it." "Same," I said, smiling. "I didn't see this coming. But now that it's here," he added. "Feels right," I nodded. "It really does." After the music faded out, we sat there in that room for almost an hour, just talking about dumb stuff, deep stuff, past stuff. He told me about how he'd been crushing on me since October, but convinced himself I was straight. I told him I noticed the way he looked at me during psych lectures, but figured I was reading into it. "So we were both just scared idiots," he said. "Yep. Classic romance." Eventually, he stood up and offered his hand. "Come on, let's go outside before I fall asleep to your sad piano concert." I took it, letting him pull me up, but I didn't let go of his hand, and neither did he. Over the next week, we eased into whatever this thing between us was becoming. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't filled with big declarations or heavy conversations every night. It was subtle, real. It was him sneaking me an extra cookie at the dining hall, me waiting for him outside of track practice, him texting me, "Come over," followed by a dumb gif, me replying, "Already on my way." We didn't tell anyone. Not yet. It wasn't about hiding. It just felt too new, too fragile to throw into the chaos of public scrutiny. Still, little things leaked through. Like the way his eyes softened when we passed each other on campus. Or the way his fingers lingered on my wrist a little too long when we sat next to each other at a group study session. Or how, when we'd run into Mr. Russo again on Friday, this time outside the library, he looked at us both, raised an eyebrow, and said, "Boys." Just that, one word. But it carried everything. That night, I brought Aiden back to my place. We didn't do anything intense. We didn't need to. We laid on my bed listening to music, our legs tangled, his arms slung lazily over my chest. At some point, he dozed off, cheek pressed against my shoulder, breaths deep and even. I didn't sleep, not because I was anxious, but because I couldn't stop smiling. I stayed awake staring at the ceiling, thinking about how weird the world is. How one locked door and a nosy janitor could break down walls I'd spent years building. And now? Now there was nothing between us. No closet, no fear, just Aiden. And me. And whatever we were becoming. Spring break hit the campus like a switch flipped. By Friday, the quad was half empty. People were packing cars, dragging suitcases, saying goodbye like they'd be gone for years. The energy was wild, buzzy. Everybody rushing off to beaches, back home, or wherever broke college kids with gas money could reach. Aiden and I hadn't made any official plans. I assumed he'd go home for a few days. He was from about 2 hours away, and I hadn't wanted to press. But that morning, while we sat in the student union finishing bagels and coffee, he casually said, "So you want to come with me?" I looked up. "With you?" "To my place. For a few days. I mean, only if you want to." "You're inviting me to meet your family?" he smirked. "Not like a dinner with my grandma or anything. My mom's cool. She'll probably just be hyped. I brought someone home who knows how to load a dishwasher." My stomach twisted with something between excitement and terror. "You sure?" He nodded. "I want to. Not as a friend, just as us." It was the first time he'd said it like that. Direct. No coded phrasing, no hesitation. Just us. I nodded slowly. "Okay, let's do it." His house was modest. Suburban. The kind of place with a cracked driveway and wind chimes on the porch. It smelled like fabric softener and vanilla when we walked in. His mom was everything I hoped she'd be, warm, funny, the kind of woman who hugs like she means it and immediately offers food, even if you say you're not hungry. "Make yourselves at home," she said, handing Aiden the keys to the guest room. "And no funny business. Unless I'm not home, then I don't want to know." Aiden turned crimson. "Mom," I laughed. She winked at me. We settled into the guest room, which had 2 twin beds, an old lava lamp, and a ceiling fan that made the same squeaky click every 7 seconds. That night, we stayed up playing Mario Kart on an ancient console hooked up to a boxy TV. Aiden beat me every time. "Rematch," I said, grabbing another controller. "You sure? Your ego's already limping." I threw a pillow at him. He threw it back. Eventually, we gave up on the game and just lay on the carpet, talking in low voices. "Why do you think we waited so long?" I asked, staring at the ceiling. He was quiet for a moment. "Fear, probably. Timing. Dumb assumptions." "Yeah." I kept telling myself you were the kind of guy who'd never look twice at me. "Then you should have seen my camera roll sophomore year." I blinked. "Wait, what?" He smirked. "I took a picture of you once in psych. You were reading, totally zoned out." I told myself I liked the lighting. I laughed. "That's creepy, but also kind of flattering." He rolled onto his side, propped up on one elbow. I guess I just didn't want to admit it, that I liked a guy, that I liked you. My throat tightened. I reached out, fingers finding his. "Well," I said softly, "you don't have to hide it anymore." He looked at me for a long second, then leaned down and kissed me. Gentle, certain, the kind of kiss that felt like a promise. We didn't do anything else that night, just crawled into one of the tiny twin beds, curled into each other, and let the silence wrap around us like a blanket. The next morning, his mom made pancakes and teased us for both smelling like boy sleep. When we left a few days later, she pulled me into another hug and whispered, "Take care of him." I nodded. "I will." And I meant it. The rest of spring break was a blur. Movie nights, late breakfasts, sleepy afternoons where I'd catch Aiden watching me like he still couldn't believe this was real. On the last night, as we lay on his bed listening to rain hit the roof, he said, "So what happens when we're back at school?" I turned my head. "What do you want to happen?" "I want us to stop pretending." "You mean be out?" "Yeah, I'm tired of secrets." I paused, then reached for his hand under the covers. "Then let's do it." We didn't make a big announcement. We didn't stand on a cafeteria table or post a soft-filtered selfie with some poetic caption. We just were. Back on campus, we walked through the quad together, sat next to each other in class. ate lunch without leaving a seat between us. And when someone looked at us a second too long, Aiden would reach over and brush his fingers against mine, not as a challenge, but as a quiet declaration. The news spread the way everything does in college, through whispers, stares, and did you see texts. Some people were surprised, some weren't. A few friends said, "It's about time." A few more said nothing, but smiled differently around us. And of course, there were people who had opinions, the ones who couldn't help themselves, but they didn't matter, not really, because Aiden stopped hiding. And I stopped doubting. We were us now, out loud. One afternoon, we were heading to the cafeteria, hands brushing just enough to make me smile like an idiot, when we saw Mr. Russo mopping the hallway by the maintenance closet. Same faded work shirt, same ring of keys, same unreadable expression. He glanced at us, then at our hands, then back at us. And for the first time since that weird afternoon in the AV closet, he spoke directly. "Took you boys long enough," he said, not looking up from his mop. Aiden chuckled. "You're lucky we didn't report you for illegal matchmaking," Russo shrugged. "Best work I've done all year," I laughed. "You always that smooth?" He looked up, met my eyes, and winked. "Kid, I've been unlocking closets longer than you've been alive." We walked away grinning like idiots. Later that night, Aiden showed up in my place with takeout and a hoodie that smelled like laundry and cologne. We watched some terrible action movie, legs tangled on the couch, pausing every 10 minutes to kiss like we hadn't seen each other in days. And somewhere between the greasy food and the third explosion scene, he whispered, "You make it feel easy." I looked at him, touched the side of his face, and said, "That's because it is. When it's real." And it was real. It wasn't just a secret anymore. It wasn't just a kiss in a locked room. It was dinners, movies, arguments about what to watch, long walks, bad coffee, good days, hard ones too. It was holding hands in public and not caring who saw. It was waking up next to someone who wanted to stay. It was a janitor who saw through our crap and decided we needed a little push. And it was everything I never knew I needed until he looked at me like I was already his.